The entire cell block went quiet when Dante Reaper Morrison shoved the old man against the concrete wall. No one intervened. They never did when Reaper was involved. Marcus Webb didn't fight back. He just straightened his prison blues, adjusted his thick-rimmed glasses, and walked to his bunk without saying a word. He was 63 years old, thin, with silver hair and the kind of tired eyes that had seen too much. He'd been transferred to Ironwood Correctional 3 days ago, and already he'd become Reaper's newest target. Reaper ruled D-Block like a warlord. 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle and malice. He had a tear tattoo under his left eye for every man he'd put down on the outside. There were 7 tears. His crew, 4 younger inmates who fed off his dominance, followed him everywhere, laughing at his jokes, echoing his threats. "Old man thinks he's too good to talk," Reaper announced to the rec yard the next morning. He stood over Marcus, who sat alone at a concrete table with a dog-eared book. "I asked you a question yesterday. Where are you from?" Marcus looked up slowly. "Ohio." "Ohio." Reaper grinned, gold teeth flashing. "You hear that? Ohio. This man's polite." He snatched the book from Marcus's hands and flipped through it. "What you in for, Ohio? Tax evasion? Wrote a bad check. Manslaughter." Marcus's voice was steady, almost bored. The yard went silent. Reaper's grin faltered for half a second, then came back wider. "Manslaughter. That's cute. Probably hit someone with your car." He tossed the book over the fence into the dirt. "You gonna go get that? Or you gonna sit there like a statue?" Marcus stood slowly. He was a full foot shorter than Reaper. "I'll get it later." "You'll get it now." "No." Marcus met his eyes. "I won't." The tension crackled. Reaper's crew shifted closer, waiting for the signal. But Reaper just laughed, a low, dangerous sound. "You got heart, old man. I'll give you that. But heart don't mean much in here." That night, Marcus found his bunk slashed open, his few belongings scattered across the floor. The message was clear. The guards didn't care. In D-Block, you handled your own problems. By the end of the week, Marcus had become invisible. He moved through the prison like a ghost, never speaking unless spoken to, never making eye contact, always alone. The other inmates whispered about him. Some thought he was scared. Others thought he was smart. A few thought he was broken. Reaper thought he was weak. "You know what I think?" Reaper said one afternoon in the Chow hall, loud enough for everyone to hear. He sat 2 tables away from Marcus, but his voice carried. "I think Ohio's a snitch. I think he cut a deal to get out early. I think he's sitting in here writing reports to the warden every night." Heads turned. Being labeled a snitch in prison was a death sentence. Marcus kept eating his potatoes. He didn't look up. "You hear me, Ohio?" Reaper stood and walked over. His crew followed. "I'm talking to you. I hear you." Marcus set down his plastic fork. "You're wrong, but I hear you." "Wrong." Reaper leaned down, his face inches from Marcus's. "Prove it." "I don't need to prove anything." "Yeah, you do." Reaper grabbed Marcus's tray and dumped it on the floor. Mashed potatoes and gravy splattered across the concrete. "Clean it up." Marcus stood. Slowly. His movements were deliberate, calm. He looked at Reaper, then at the mess, then back at Reaper. "No." The Chow hall went dead silent. Reaper's face twisted. "What did you say?" "I said no." Marcus's voice didn't rise. It didn't waver. "You want it cleaned, you clean it." Reaper's fist came fast. But Marcus wasn't there. He sidestepped with a smoothness that didn't match his age, and Reaper's knuckles slammed into the metal table with a sickening crunch. He howled, clutching his hand. The guards rushed in, shouting, pulling them apart. Marcus didn't resist. He let them cuff him and lead him away. Reaper screamed threats the entire time, his face red with rage and humiliation. Marcus spent 3 days in solitary. When he came back, the whispers had changed. "You see how fast he moved? Old man's got training. Reaper's gonna kill him." But Reaper didn't make a move. Not yet. His hand was wrapped in a splint, and his pride was bruised worse than his bones. He watched Marcus from across the yard, plotting. 2 weeks later, the prison hosted a mandatory group therapy session. It was held in the chapel. A cinder block room with metal folding chairs and a facilitator who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Reaper and his crew sat in the back. Marcus sat in the front, alone. The facilitator asked the usual questions. Anyone want to share what brought them here? What they learned? Silence. Then Marcus raised his hand. Everyone stared. I worked for the state of Ohio for 32 years, Marcus said quietly. I was an execution technician at Lucasville, the man who administered lethal injections. I put 47 men to death. The room froze. I followed the law. I did my job. But one night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing their faces. So I started drinking. And one night, I got behind the wheel and killed a woman and her daughter. His voice cracked. I pled guilty. I didn't fight it. Because I deserved to be here. No one spoke. Even the facilitator looked shaken. Reaper leaned back in his chair, his face unreadable. After the session, Marcus walked back to his cell. He didn't expect what happened next. Reaper was waiting for him. But he wasn't alone. His crew surrounded him, but they weren't moving. Reaper stood in the center, arms crossed. He stared at Marcus for a long time. You really put 47 men down? Reaper asked. Yes. And you didn't brag? Didn't tell nobody? No. Reaper nodded slowly. You could have put me on my back in the chow hall. I saw it in your eyes. But you didn't. Marcus said nothing. Why? Because you're not worth going back to solitary for. Reaper's jaw tightened. Then, to everyone's shock, he laughed. Not mockingly. Genuinely. You got more spine than half the men in here, Ohio. He turned and walked away. His crew followed. From that day on, no one touched Marcus Webb. Reaper didn't become his friend, but he didn't need to. Respect in prison wasn't about friendship. It was about understanding. Marcus spent the rest of his sentence in peace. He read his books. He kept to himself. And when younger inmates asked him for advice, he gave it. Quietly. Honestly. On the day of his release, Reaper was in the yard. He didn't say goodbye. He just nodded. Marcus nodded back and walked out a free man.